You know what's better than one boss guide? Two boss guides. Which is only half honest because they're basically the same boss. I mean, heck, the Meteonyker and Red Meteonyker are just recolors of each other. Also, from here on, I'm gonna call them Red Meteo and Decay Meteo cause Meteonyker's a mouthful, and I'm not saying all that. We'll start with Red Meteo, which is the level 121 super boss and Volcane Dungeon, required for a quest at level 119 that gives 40% XP at that level, and an inventory slot. But more importantly for us, it drops bloody weapons and 120 armor parts. Though that seems to be rather often forgotten about given how many people just pay for a clear and never actually farm it themselves. So today, let's go over where it is, what you need to beat it, mechanics, and some other interesting tips. And since the Meteonyker and Decay Mines is a watered down version of the same boss, we'll go over that one too. Let's start with getting to the boss. The entrance to Volcane is by Captain Kearns. If you use a Blinkwing of Magical or are in a guild with a ship that has a teleported NPC, you can go straight to the entrance. But for everyone else, the closest you can teleport to is Village of Khan, which you can get to with a Blinkwing of Dargon 3 or a Town Blinkwing. Once you're inside, make sure you have Quickstep because it's about a 5-minute run from here to the boss entrance with it. And probably a minute longer without. We'll go straight here and take the first right. Watch out for any Berserk Meteors along the way. If you're on FWC and under like level 133-ish, I recommend using the No Giant channel so you don't have to deal with these or any of the other giants along the way. This is a long walk, so if you want to save some time in the future, you'll want to consider buying some Summon a Party leaders and putting them on an alt character you permanently leave here so you can get summoned. Or if you have 2 level 61s you're not using for anything else and don't really use the couple system, you can have your main and RM become couples with the level 61 alts and use the couple teleport to get here for free every day. Just don't put them on channel 4 or 14. Coming up on the end, the flying giants you see here called Gruntizers drop red circles on you while you're already busy trying to survive the Zephus, which hit you hard enough as is. Beyond the Gruntizers and the Zephus, you'll find the NPC you're looking for. With that out of the way, talk to the NPC and you'll see this window. You'll need to be either on or have completed the quest The Red Meteonyker to enter the boss room. Once you're inside, anyone else in your party can join the same instance within the next minute, even if they don't meet the requirements themselves. This is really nice because it means your RM can also enter even if they're underleveled. Make sure both characters are on the same channel and select the same difficulty. Because it's going to be really awkward if you enter different instances. You do that, you may as well come back tomorrow because there's a big drop rate penalty for being solo. The boss will have less HP, but that doesn't really count for much since this boss is only doable once per day. Once you're inside, you'll have a 1-minute preparation phase which also functions as an entry lockout. Use this minute to buff up and put your res or assist in a safe spot if you brought one in with you. When prep time is over, the boss will spawn and no other characters can join the instance. Red Meteor will spawn in the center and has an unusually large aggro radius, so if you don't want to start the fight right away, stay near the walls. Whenever you're ready, lure the boss to Pillar 1, marked on the map here, and position yourself so that both you and Red Meteor have one side pointed at the wall as shown in this diagram. The boss's attacks cleave in a pretty large radius around the target, just a step smaller than what Healrain and Gebertifith can reach, so your Ringmaster will want to stand just outside of it so they can heal and buff without getting cleaved. The simplest way to do this is to just cast Gubertiel on the DPS, which, coincidentally, is just a hair farther than the cleave radius. And would work great if this game didn't have massive position lag issues. But anyway, you should only rely on Gubertiel to position you properly if you know you can survive a hit. If you know you'll get one shot, you should instead heal using Circle Healing, which has a bigger radius, and weave between the boss's auto attacks to refresh Gebra. Anyway, specific details aside, if you just stand at the max range of Holy Cross around this highlighted area, 99% of the time you're going to be in the right spot. If you know you'll get one shot, you'll want to be more around this side up front, just to be safe. Once this is set up, there are now multiple things you need to look out for that we'll go over one at a time. First, we have these squished Meteor ads. They don't have a lot of HP and aren't really a threat, especially once you're level 135 and take 99% reduced damage from them. But even before that, it's not like they hit super hard or really do anything besides maybe mess with the clickable area of the boss, or harass your arm if they happen to aggro them first. You could kill them, but it's better to leave them alone until there's 3 of them, which is the most the boss can have summoned. If you're stuck on 2 ads for what feels like unusually long, check the center of the room. Red Meteor could have summoned one when you first pulled it. Once you see 3 of these scorched meteors out at the same time, you'll want to drag the boss and the ads to pillar 2 you see on the top left of the map. This will cause the ads to de-aggro just slightly before they reach you. Once they're all gone, you can go back to positioning like the right diagram again. The walls on this side of the room are curved though, so rather than sticking to the wall, you should put yourself between pillar 2 and 3 as shown here. By the way, if you have a coral weapon, you can ignore the ads completely and just stay at the spot you started the fight at. They will naturally get cleared by a water bomb. It's not really worth the effort to keep them alive to spawn all 3. While that's happening, there's 3 other more dangerous mechanics you need to keep an eye out for throughout the fight. There's the fireball, which happens once every 32 seconds, with some slight variance on the actual timing. When it's about to happen, you'll get a big announcement in the middle of your screen that says, "Your name, come closer, face me, burn," followed by a fireball that hits the character that dealt the most damage since the last fireball, and that player will now become the boss's target. Red Meteor does not naturally change aggro outside of this mechanic. If you have a designated night tank, they can call a Fury to taunt the boss afterward. Or if they time it just right, they can make the fireball target them instead of the highest DPS. But our goal is to farm Red Meteor with just 1 DPS and RM, so you don't need to concern yourself with this. Or do. Not really my business if you decide to farm Red Meteor as a trio, I guess. Anyway, these next 2 mechanics are chosen at random once every 61 seconds. The first, less dangerous one is called Burn because when it happens, the announcement says, "You will burn. You will all burn," and is followed by a circular AoE that deals initial damage to all players, applies a damage over time effect for 20 seconds, that deals 5500 damage in a radius around the player on expiration. There's no red circle to show the range of this ability, but it reaches out about as far as your Ringmaster can wholly cross from. So when you see the message, your Ringmaster should step back slightly, and give Tiala the burn afterward. The other mechanic, which I'm sure everyone who's ever ran this boss has probably warned you about, is Melt. When it's about to happen, the announcement will say, "Fools, I will melt you all." From the time you see the message, you have 3 seconds to get out of range before it starts dealing damage. After those 3 seconds, the boss will deal over 60k damage over 3 seconds in a huge circle around itself. There's no red circle to show the danger zone, so all you can do is run as far as you can until you see the breath animation go off. The most straightforward way to handle this mechanic is to always have some area behind your character always clickable, so you can click to run the moment you see the message. If you're dual clienting on your RM, you can either have a similar but mirrored camera setup for both characters so you can click the ground on both of them quickly, or just have your RM run away ahead of time. But to do that, you'd have to know ahead of time if there's a possible melt happening soon. To do that, you'd have to track the timer on melt, which is annoying but not difficult. 61 seconds is basically a minute with a bit of forgiveness, so you really only have to remember what second on the dungeon timer the last melt or burn happened at. If you didn't see the exact time because you were focused on running away, just count 40-ish seconds from what the timer was at when you return to your spot and stay alert. Here's how the order of mechanics plays out, and I'm gonna highlight a few things here. The timer for mechanics pauses if the boss leaves combat for any reason. This could happen when a normal attack cleave kills someone that wasn't the boss's current target, or if you full wipe to a melt. The main concern with that is if you've been tracking Melt's timer, you've now lost it. Since there's almost always 2 fireballs between melts and burns, if you know the second fireball hasn't happened yet, you can recalibrate from there, but if you don't, you have to be on high alert for up to a minute. The other thing to notice is how the time between the second fireball and the following melt or burn slowly gets shorter until you reach these last few points where they happen at the same time. When this happens, Red Meteor will fireball first and do either melt or stun, and you'll see the announcement for both at the same time. Usually this overlap won't be a problem. What happens most of the time is either you don't get stunned, or even if you do, Red Meteor casts burn and you're fine anyway. But there's the worst case in which you get stunned by the fireball and melt happens. And realistically, this can happen multiple times in a row because, let's be real, there's not a huge difference between the fireball happening 1 to 2 seconds before melt and this overlap. When this happens, the safe thing to do is have your RM run and just let the DPS die so they can get rest. Unless, of course, your RM is an absolute gamer who can do this. Anyway, careful with the next melt or burn because if you let your DPS die, you'll probably lost track of the timer and there's only going to be 1 fireball 30 seconds before it. That's it for Red Meteo. Regular Meteonyker and Decane is basically the same boss, but without any ads. I do need to go over a few things for it though. First thing, Decane Meteo is a guild boss, not a party boss, which means it resets every other day rather than every day. Its reset timer isn't based on when you kill it. Instead, as you can see here, you can enter once at any time within a 48-hour block. This does technically mean that you can run it back to back if you enter at the end of one block, and go again at the beginning of the next block. It also means anyone you want to run this boss with has to be in the same guild as you. Being in the same party does nothing. Also, you can bring as many characters as you want provided they're in the same guild. There is, however, an unfortunate level 70 requirement to enter Decane at all, so if you want to bring a Reser, it has to be at least level 70. Once you're inside, you still have your 1-minute lockout time. After that, Meteo doesn't spawn right away. Instead, you have to clear these 4 Chimeradons, after which the boss will spawn at this spot right away, to make sure the DPS character is standing closer to that spot than the RM. You can fight the boss here of course, but I recommend you move the boss to this green spotlight on the ground here, and reposition yourself so that your back faces the rest of the room. This gives you a lot of space to run from melt. If you happen to die but you brought your Reser inside with you, they can rest without the boss jumping on them. The aggro range for this boss, assuming it's at its spawn point, it's just about this big green circle in the middle, so try to stand outside of it at all times. Or just tank the melt. A ranger with good pill timing can survive it with just 9k HP. Trust me. And that's all there's to cover for Decane's Meteo. Let's move on to stats and gear. Red Meteo unlocks level 119, but is level 121. And honestly, you don't actually want to fight this until 122 since that both reduces the critical damage you take and increases your own critical damage. It doesn't decrease the normal damage you take after 121 though, since super bosses don't lose damage for being lower level than you. With that being said, here's how much HP you should have, assuming your set is +8 and your suit element is at least +5. The set upgrade doesn't really change the numbers here much. +8 really only reduces the damage by like 200 compared to clean, but you need to upgrade your set anyway for the hit rate. Notice I have 2 numbers here. The recommended value is how much HP you need to survive the fireballs. If you want to play it extra safe, you can go with this green number instead, which gives you room to take an additional hit, but with blocks, misses, and pills all thrown in the mix, you really shouldn't need all that. Technically, you can still get one-shot by stuff like a crit fireball during in-rage, but I think it's better to accept that you'll die to something like that once in a blue moon than to plan for something you'll see so rarely. Especially since you can just get rest if it does happen. And of course, melt does something like 60k damage, so we're not even going to try and survive that. Damage-wise, this is how much DPS you would need if you never get stunned, never die, and never have to run from melt, and so on. which is never the case, so instead, let's just say this is how much DPS you need to do on a target dummy without consumables, party skills, or Holy Cross from your Ringmaster. At the end of the day though, this slide is kinda useless. As long as you have plus 8 gear, your Ringmaster's Holy Crossing, and you have Link or Global, ideally from a friend who won't kick you while you're in there, an upcut stone which I'm sure you have plenty of, you're going to clear as long as you have the HP and aren't dying to every melt. And speaking of upcut, here's all the premium items you'd want to consider using in case you don't want to be there for the entire hour. No mage prems though. Mages really shouldn't be wasting time on this boss. Just, go level more. Not saying mages can't do it, because they can, but it's just always better for them to level in my opinion. And that covers everything. If you do 100 runs of Decay Meteor, you'll get the Dragon Slayer title, which is pretty badass. It'll take you about 200 days to get though, and I know that sounds really daunting, but you can speed it up by making level 70s on the same account and joining any guildmates who happen to be running, and you'll get achievement progress just for being in the room. So while you work on that, put this thing here.